The creak of thick doors rang through the courthouse as Kody Brown entered, shoulders back, jaw clenched. For years, Sister Wives fans had watched him play the self-styled patriarch of a large polygamous household. Today, he wasn't entering a living room to scold his wives. He was entering a courtroom to confront the truth. The atmosphere crackled, reporters murmured, cameras snapped shutters, and the whole courtroom caught its collective breath. Christine, Janelle, and Meri sat together, solid as rock, as some of the Brown children observed from the rear. Their vision keen and unflinching. The judge didn't delay. In a firm tone, he declared, "Today we will resolve the issues of family property, fiscal responsibility, and custodial duty." That moment set the stage. This was not about land or money in the bank. This was about decades of secrets, favoritism, and the ruin of a family once presented to the world as united. But the biggest surprise was yet to come. Because what the ex-wives had next to say would leave Kody speechless and the crowd stunned. Christine stood first. Serene, measured, yet seething with passion, she informed the court of years being discarded, while Kody spent all his energy on Robin. She produced property records revealing Kody had attempted to transfer ownership of Coyote Pass in Robin's name, leaving the other wives with nothing. The room erupted in gasps. And then Janelle testified. Her testimony was a raw, emotional one. She talked about balancing bills, seeing her children struggle, and being financially abandoned, while Kody insisted on loyalty but did not provide support. Between sobs, she testified, "We built this family together, but Kody only cared about control." Lastly, Meri got up. Her tone was icy cold, each sentence piercing with finality. She described years of loneliness, being set aside, and the way Kody erased her wifehood long before the cameras ever caught a glimpse of it. "It's not about love anymore," she declared. "It's about justice." The three women weren't sharing anecdotes. They were tearing down Kody's empire brick by brick. But what they all were not counting on was the fact that Kody had still some tricks up his sleeve. And when he got his turn to address, the courtroom prepared for fireworks. When Kody finally got to his feet, he puffed out his chest, raised his voice, and delivered a red-hot rant on loyalty, family cohesion, and religious obligation. He cast himself as the wronged patriarch, betrayed by wives who had fallen to outside influences. But his rhetoric was empty. The judge interrupted him twice, requiring hard evidence. Kody did not have any. And then there was the kicker. Christine's attorney played audio recordings of phone calls where Kody was heard scheming to sever financial connections with his former wives, as it would force them into obedience. The courtroom gasped. The Brown children hung their heads in shame. Christine covered her mouth in shock. Janelle's eyes blazed with anger. And Meri? She simply stared, her silence more condemning than any scream. Kody's face flushed with red. He tried to protest, but the tapes were unmistakable, the words undeniable. His defense was shattered before all eyes. But the ultimate blow was yet to come, because the judge's decision would do more than expose Kody. It would alter his future permanently. Hours passed before the judge leaned forward, his expression somber. The whole room tensed. This was it. The verdict. "Mr. Brown," the judge started, "this court finds that your conduct has done great emotional and financial damage. Your trying to consolidate property into one wife's name is manipulative and unfair." Each word hit like lightning. The wives all looked at each other with relief. Christine clasped Janelle's hand. Meri nodded gravely. The judge went on, "Coyote Pass will be split equally between all parties. You will also still be financially supporting your previous wives and children. This isn't about power, Mr. Brown. This is about accountability." The courtroom broke out. Christine cried tears of happiness. Janelle embraced her son. Meri mouthed to herself, "It's over." But Kody? His complexion was pale. His empire, his authority, his reputation, it was falling apart before the eyes of the nation. And then, with a characteristic rhetorical flourish, the judge added one last sentence. "This family doesn't need control. It needs healing, and you, Mr. Brown, have a long way to go. That should have been the end. But what went on outside the courthouse made the verdict a media frenzy unlike anything the Browns had ever experienced. The courthouse stairs were pandemonium. Reporters yelled questions. Cameras popped like fireflies. And the family found themselves the focus of a national spectacle. Christine, beaming with relief, spoke to the press. Today was about justice. We finally have closure. Janelle, steady but emotional, added, this isn't revenge. This is freedom. Meri's words cut the deepest. I stayed quiet for years. Today my silence ended. Their unity struck a chord with fans across the country. Social media lit up. #Justice for the Wives began trending. Clips of Christine's testimony and the judge's final ruling went viral overnight. And then came Kody and Robin. They emerged from the courthouse, faces tight with anger. Robin clung to Kody's arm, tears streaming, while he muttered about betrayal and injustice. But the crowd wasn't buying it. For the first time, Kody wasn't the storyteller. He was the villain. Later that night, Christine posted a photo of her with Janelle and Meri, smiling with their children. The caption read, "We're moving forward together." Meanwhile, fans flooded forums with one burning question. Could Kody and Robin survive this storm? Or was this the final chapter of a family once built on faith, now destroyed by pride? It was one thing to know that the verdict split land and wealth, but it split Kody from his heritage. And in season 20 of this drama, the patriarch who used to insist on loyalty found himself isolated, asking if he had lost everything that really counted. The massive wooden doors of the courthouse groaned open with a sound that was more like thunder than just hinges. For years, millions of viewers had watched Kody Brown walk confidently into living rooms, surrounded by wives and children, playing patriarch in charge of his world. But this morning, it was all different. He wasn't entering his own house. He was entering a room in which he no longer called the shots. Kody stood before them in a crisp suit, pressed, polished, and deliberate. His blonde ringlets, normally flowing and untamed, lay slicked back, as if tidiness in his hair might mask disarray destroying his life. His jaw was clenched, his eyes darting between confidence and apprehension. Some declared him to resemble a general marching off to war. Others hushed that he resembled a man backed into a corner with no avenue left to flee. Journalists descended on the corridor, yelling questions. Kody, do you have a feeling you'll take it home today? What about Christine's allegations? Will Robin give evidence? Kody sidestepped them, his mouth set in a thin line. But the cameras captured the flicker of his hand at his hip. Inside, the courtroom was packed. Benches full of spectators, reporters and curious bystanders, who had witnessed the Brown family drama for over a decade, filled the rows. The tension was palpable, thick, heavy, and choking. Before the judge even arrived, everyone knew this wasn't an ordinary court hearing. This was the peak of years of reality TV drama intersecting with real-life repercussions. At the front sat three women who had once shared Kody's home, his dreams, his burdens, and according to them, his betrayal. Christine sat in the center, her face steady but her hands clenched around a folder of documents. Janelle leaned slightly toward her, whispering something that made Christine nod. On the other side sat Meri, silent, her gaze locked forward, her posture rigid. They were no longer three women fighting with each other. They were a coalition. Seated behind them were some of the Brown children, some rigid with rage, others with tears in their eyes. They had spent their childhood living in the shadow of Kody's choices, and now for the first time, they sat and watched their father face consequences from someone who could not be bribed or gagged. A judge. When Kody entered, he didn't look at his former wives. He didn't even nod at his children. Instead, he strode to his table with Robin following closely behind him. She was dressed in a serious black dress, makeup subtle, as if to highlight how she was the faithful, supportive wife. She held tightly onto Kody's arm, seeming almost to worry that without her he would collapse. Some said it was loyalty. Others said it was control. The bailiff called the room to order, and everyone stood as the judge entered. The man was stern, gray-haired with a no-nonsense presence that stopped even the whispers in their tracks. His eyes swept the room before he began to speak. This court is now in session. We are here to hear the issues related to Mr. Kody Brown and the controversies regarding financial responsibility, property division, and custodial care. The words rang out like a tolling bell. For years, sister wives drama had filled living rooms from coast to coast. But now it wasn't television. It was proof. It wasn't confessionals. It was testimony. And the stakes weren't ratings anymore. They were rights, dollars, and truth. Christine's attorney rustled papers. Janelle drummed her pen on the table, mouth set. Meri crossed her arms in her lap, impassive. And Robin, she wiped at her eyes with a tissue before anything had even started. Kody attempted a confident air, but his shoulders were rigid, his gaze flicking nervously every time the judge pushed up his glasses. The man who once ruled 4 wives now sat beneath the burden of an authority he couldn't charm, couldn't threaten, and couldn't deflect. As the opening remarks started, only the scratch of pens, the buzzing of fluorescent lights, and the occasional gasp of the observers broke the silence of the courtroom. Each word weighed with years of history. Each accusation was fraught with the specters of past debates, failed promises, and shattered hope. The judge, unflappable, held up his hand to still the room. Let us go slowly. The intent here is not to relive drama for the sake of drama. The intent is justice. And that was where the irony lay. For all those watching, whether in the courtroom or at home stuck to live broadcasts, this was drama. It was a real-life continuation of the reality show, only now the outcomes were permanent. Christine's children sat up straight, their gazes fixed on their mother, as if silently giving her strength. Janelle wrote furiously, rehearsing her moment to speak. Meri hardly blinked, her quiet more potent than anything she could say. And Kody, for the first time in years, he was small. His power lay no longer in his hands. It was in the judge's hands, the lawyers, and the truth that was going to be dragged kicking and screaming out of the darkness. The room was holding its breath, as Christine's attorney stood to speak, fidgeting with a stack of papers. But before uttering a single word, the attorney hesitated, gazed straight at Kody, and then at the judge. The tension held like a bowstring drawn tight. All of them sat forward. The storm had not even begun, but already the thunder was rumbling. And just as the first witness was getting ready to testify, the tension snapped like glass, because the secrets that were about to be uttered would not only shake the courtroom but destroy Kody's reputation forever. The courtroom was still thick with emotion when the judge nodded toward the first witness. Everyone knew who that would be. They all looked at Christine Brown. Christine stood slowly, her shoulders back, but her hands clenched tightly in a fat folder of papers. Fans had seen her for years, as the wife who smiled through the hurt, the one who fed the kids, the one who attempted to maintain the peace while secretly shattering within. But today, she was not here as the understanding wife. She was here as the woman who had finally had enough. She strode to the stand with the silent self-assurance of a person who had waited years to reach this point. The heels of her shoes clicked on the floor, the rhythm echoing like the beat of justice. She sat down, fixed the microphone, and briefly looked at Kody. He defied her gaze and gazed alternatively at the table in front of him. Christine's attorney stepped forward. "Mrs. Brown," he started, "may you tell the court in your own words why you're here today?" Christine breathed in. "I'm here because for years I had a dream of family, of unity, of faith. But what I received in return was betrayal, favoritism, and control." Gasps spread throughout the room. Christine opened her folder and waved property documents aloft. Kody attempted to transfer ownership of Coyote Pass into Robin's name. He wanted everything under her control, everything the rest of us put our heads to, sacrificed for. He attempted to strip us of and pass to her. The judge sat forward. "Do you have proof of this?" Christine's attorney nodded and presented the documents. Copies were passed out by the clerk. The papers revealed precisely what she asserted. Kody had attempted to redirect the land into Robin's name. The audience murmured indignantly. Journalists wrote notes. And Kody? His face red, his jaw tight. Christine didn't let up. Her words shook, but they cut like glass. "For years I begged Kody to see me, to see our children. But all he saw was Robin. He said one time, 'You'll never be happy until you stop questioning me.' Well, I stopped questioning him. I left him, And now I'm here to tell the truth. But Christine wasn't the only one ready to speak. Because what Janelle revealed next would hit even harder and leave Kody scrambling to defend himself. Janelle stood. Unlike Christine, who spoke with emotional fire, Janelle came prepared with cold, hard facts. She adjusted her glasses, carried a thick binder, and looked directly at the judge. "I'm not here to argue feelings," she said firmly. "I'm here to argue numbers." She opened her binder and removed financial documents. "Your Honor, I paid bills, paid household expenses, and provided for our children for years, while Kody spent family money on Robin's household. He said there was no money to pay for my kids' tuition. There was always money for Robin's children." Whispers swirled through the courtroom. Janelle turned to another page, holding it aloft. "I borrowed money to pay living expenses because Kody wouldn't assist. He demanded commitment, but relinquished responsibility. This isn't neglect. It's financial abuse." She slammed the binder closed, her voice cracking for the first time. "We created this family together. But Kody needed all the fame with none of the sacrifice." One of Janelle's sons at the back row clenched his fists. His face reddened in suppressed anger. The judge scribbled on his papers, his face firming up. Kody fidgeted in his seat, his mouth opening as if he would protest. But his lawyer put a restraining hand on his arm. "Not yet." And just when the courtroom believed it had heard enough, Meri Brown stood up, her testimony colder, sharper, and more final than anything they had heard so far. Meri got up with slow deliberateness, her steps careful, nearly frosty. She didn't have stacks of paperwork like Christine and Janelle. She didn't require them. Her weapon was her narrative. She strode to the stand, raised her chin, and locked eyes with the judge. For years, she started gently. "I was invisible. Kody made me invisible." The room leaned forward, trying to hear. Meri went on. "I was the first wife. I built this family with him. But as the years passed, Kody excluded me. He left me by myself, neglected me, and told me that I had no room in his heart. He said it in front of the world, even. Imagine having to hear the man you dedicated your life to tell you he does not love you while everyone is watching." Her voice broke for one moment, but then it hardened once more. "I remained silent for years, because I believed silence to be strength. But silence was only powerful to him. Today, I am no longer silent." The whole courtroom held its breath. Even Robin wiped away a tear. Christine covered her mouth. Janelle nodded resolutely. Then Meri came through with the knockout punch. "This is no longer about marriage. This is no longer about love. This is about justice. And justice requires that Kody be held accountable at last." The audience exploded with whispers. The judge rapped his gavel to reclaim attention. But even he could not suppress the flash of compassion in his eyes. Kody sat rigid, his complexion pale. He looked at Robin, who took his hand, but even she seemed shaken. The man who had once ruled 3 wives with power now seemed a specter of himself. The ex-wives had spoken. Their voices corroborated in one unequivocal message. Kody wasn't a failed husband. He was a man who attempted to erase them. But the true explosion was yet to come, because Kody's desperate defense would shatter the moment the truth was played aloud in the entire courtroom. The courtroom was plunged into a dense silence. Christine, Janelle, and Meri had testified in flame. In fact, and in the sort of truth that resonated more powerfully than any debate. Their words lingered in the air like smoke after combat. Everybody looked at Kody. This was his time. The time he'd been waiting for. Opportunity to defend himself, to regain the power which had slipped through his fingers. He stood up straight, squared his shoulders, and slowly rose to his feet. For a moment, he attempted to tap the confidence which once ruled 4 wives and a cluster of children. But the room could sense it. His confidence was fragile. Kody approached the stand with purposeful steps, though his hands fluttered at his sides. Robin smiled encouragingly, holding a tissue in her palm. She mouthed, "You can do this." Kody coughed, his voice booming initially, attempting to drown out the whispers. "Your Honor, members of the court, I am here today as a man who has been mischaracterized. For years, I have been labeled selfish, manipulative and cruel. That is not me. That is not true. He allowed the words to hang, looking into the judge's eyes as if challenging him to disagree. Then he began his defense. I constructed this family on faith, Kody shouted. I sacrificed everything to build a harmonious home. My wives understood the commitment, the struggles, the baggage. But when it became tough, when the world turned against me, they left. They turned against me, not because of what I've done, but because of external influence, because of bitterness, because of jealousy. Whispers ran through the crowd. Christine's kids shook their heads. Janelle raised an eyebrow. Meri remained still. Kody continued. They talk about favoritism, but their definition of favoritism is love. Robin has been there for me when nobody else would. She didn't betray me. She didn't go to the media. She didn't poison the children against me. She stayed. That's why I relied on her. That's why she got more of me. Because she deserved it. The words stung the courtroom like a slap. Christine's face contorted in rage. Janelle growled under her breath. Even Robin's tears were not enough to temper the sting of what Kody had just confessed, that his so-called love was not unconditional, that it was only given to the obedient wife. The judge held up a hand. Mr. Brown, stay on evidence, not emotion. Kody blinked, stammering for a moment, before going on. The truth is, Your Honor, my wives aren't victims. They're participants in this downfall. They left behind our values. They left me when things turned difficult. And now they come here with tales manipulated to paint me as the bad guy. He nodded forward, his tone stern. I am not the bad guy. I am the one who remained faithful to the vision that we created. If anyone disloyal to this family existed, it wasn't me. It was them. He struck his hand onto the railing for effect. The sound cracked through the courtroom. But what Kody hadn't understood was that his passionate defense had already begun to come back to haunt him, for the proof in waiting would reduce his words to cinders. Christine's attorney stood quietly, clutching a thin sheaf of papers. Your Honor, might I? The judge nodded. The attorney turned to Kody, his tone firm. Mr. Brown, you speak of loyalty. You speak of devotion. But what about your own words? Kody scowled. What are you saying? The attorney beckoned to a technician standing at the evidence table. Instantly, the hushed courtroom erupted with the sound of a tape recorder. And then, unmistakably, Kody's voice echoed through the speakers. If they don't comply, I'll cut them off. Financially, emotionally, completely. That'll teach them. That'll get them back in line. Gasps broke out throughout the room. Christine placed her hand over her mouth. Red with rage, Janelle's face turned crimson. Meri slowly shook her head, as if to hear the words spoken finally brought even more pain. Kody's eyes grew wide. That's out of context, he bellowed. His lawyer grabbed at his arm, repeating something urgently, but Kody brushed him aside. You can't play that without my approval. That's private. The judge slammed his gavel. Order in the court. Please be seated, Mr. Brown. But the attorney wasn't done. He pushed another button. A second tape played. You don't get it, Robin. They have to be punished. If they believe they can exist without me, good luck with that. But they won't last without my money. That'll teach them who's boss. The room exploded once more. This wasn't hearsay. This wasn't bitterness. This was Kody's voice. Scheming control, boasting of power, demeaning his wives to pawns. Christine's children stared at their dad with tears in their eyes. The onlookers loudly murmured. The words abuse, control, and manipulation racing through the air like fire. Kody's face flushed. He sprang to his feet. Those tapes are phony. Do you understand? Phony. His voice broke, desperation piercing the bravado. This is all a conspiracy. They've lied about everything I've said, everything I've done. I was trying to defend this family. I was trying to lead. The judge's gavel came down a second time. Sit down, Mr. Brown, or you will be held in contempt. For an instant, Kody was frozen. His chest rose and fell. His fists trembled, but gradually he subsided into his seat, his glare pinned on Christine and Janelle, as if personally having been betrayed by them in the most heinous manner. Robin clutched his hand, whispering desperately, but her tears couldn't erase the truth now ringing in all ears. And as the silence fell once more, one thing became evident. Kody's defense wasn't merely weak. It was disintegrating. But the judge remained silent, and what he next said would strike a blow Kody could be unable to withstand. The courtroom was thick with tension. The sound recordings of Kody's own voice lingered in the room like a storm cloud. The silence that remained afterward was oppressive, so heavy, it pushed against the walls, the benches, the hearts of all who were present. The judge, a severe-looking man with eyes as sharp as glass, took off his glasses and set them down delicately on the bench. He sat in silence for a full minute, allowing the gravity of the evidence to sink in. All that could be heard was the soft scratching of the clerk's pen and Robin's stifled sobs into a wadded tissue. At last, the judge's voice broke the silence. Measured, deep, unyielding. "Mr. Brown," he started, his voice cold but firm. "This court has heard hours of testimony, read hundreds of documents, and now, heard your own words. And what I have sitting in front of me is not a man fighting for his family, but a man fighting for control. There is a difference." Kody shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his jaw clenching. He longed to talk, to yell, to deny, but the gavel had forbidden him. The judge looked at Christine, Janelle, and Meri. The affidavits of these women were consistent, credible, and corroborated by both budget records, and most damagingly, Mr. Brown's own tapes. What they experienced was not partnership. It was manipulation. What they went through was not equality. It was control disguised as leadership. Christine let her head drop, tears flowing copiously. Janelle squared her shoulders, a surge of vindication sweeping through her. Meri, the most reserved of the group, finally let out a breath, as if she'd been holding it for decades. The judge's eyes met Kody's once more. "You said you were loyal, but what you required was obedience. You said you loved us, but what you exhibited was favoritism. And you said you sacrificed, yet what you exercised was power over those who placed the greatest faith in you." Gasp after gasp circulated throughout the room. Robin grasped Kody's arm, speaking in a desperate whisper. "It's not true. They don't understand." But Kody's expression was unyielding. His mouth set in a thin line as fury seethed beneath the surface. Then came a moment that no one could undo. The judge leaned forward. This court decides in favor of Christine, Janelle, and Meri. Full separation of property is awarded. Custodial control of minor children is taken away from Mr. Brown. Financial independence is granted to the wives. And in addition, Kody's head jerked up, eyes wide. "Mr. Brown, because of evidence of coercion, threats, and deliberate manipulation, this court finds your testimony to be unreliable. From here on out, you will have no control over the financial or personal choices of your former wives." The gavel came down. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Final. Absolute. The room outbursted. Christine hid her face in her hands, crying, not because of pain this time, but release. Janelle hugged her children, drawing them to her in a fierce hold. Meri sat unmoving, tears tracking silently down her face, as if she couldn't believe the nightmare was over. Kody, though, blew. "This is outrageous," he thundered, leaping to his feet. "You're stealing everything from me. Everything I created, everything I sacrificed." He pointed a finger at Christine. You poisoned them against me. You destroyed this family." The judge slammed his gavel again. "Mr. Brown, control yourself." But Kody couldn't be stopped. Decades of anger pent up finally burst forth. "You'll pay for this. You'll all pay for this. You think you've won, but you've destroyed our family, our religion, everything we believed in." His voice broke, his chest panting. "You betrayed me." Security guards stepped forward, prepared to hold him back. Robin held onto his sleeve, weeping hysterically. "Kody, no, please." But he pulled his arm free and glared at everyone in the courtroom with crazed eyes. But as Kody raged, something unexpected occurred. Something he wasn't expecting. Christine stood up. Her crying had ceased, and now her voice held the resilience of a woman who had waited decades for this moment. "No, Kody, we didn't betray you. We survived you." The words were harder than the gavel. The courtroom was silent once more. Even Kody stood still, his anger stuck in his throat. Janelle stood by Christine. "You speak of family, but family is founded on love, not control. You lost us because you never realized that. Meri, who had been silent through most of the trial, finally spoke, her voice shaking but firm. And the saddest part, Kody, is that you'll never see it. You'll never get it why you're standing alone today. The three women stood together, not broken shards anymore, but a wall of strength. The judge nodded slowly, his decision sealed not only in law, but in spirit. This case is closed. The gavel came down one last time, and the fallout witnesses hummed with whispers. Journalists scrambled for notes. The gravity of the decision swept through the room like wildfire. Christine wrapped her daughters in a tight hug, her tears of relief wetting their shoulders. "It's over," she breathed. "It's finally over." Janelle held her son's hand, her face aglow with pride. "We fought, and we won." Meri stood off to the side, looking at the vacant spot where her family had once stood together, as one. For the first time in years, she felt the shackles loosen around her. She wasn't just getting through it anymore. She was free. While Kody slumped into his chair, burying his head in his hands, the man who once marched around with unassailable power now appeared small, trapped, and shattered. Robin cried by his side, but her tears hid only his rage. He mumbled to himself, repeatedly, "They'll pay for this. They'll all pay." But the reality was evident. The hammer had dropped. The judgment was irrevocable, and Kody Brown's kingdom of domination had fallen at his own feet. But beyond those courtroom walls, the tale wasn't over. For while the wives were rejoicing in liberation, Kody was already scheming his next step, and the world would learn soon. He was not going down without a fight. The reverberation of the gavel still echoed in their heads as the courtroom cleared. But beyond those doors lay a new world. Freedom wasn't legal to Christine, Janelle, and Meri. It was spiritual, emotional, and personal. They weren't leaving Kody so much as they were leaving themselves behind. For Kody, though, the same doors led to a different world. One bereft of the authority he had held, one in which he was no longer the axis of the universe, but a man with remnants of what he had lost. Christine was the first to exit the courthouse that day, led by her children. Cameras clicked, reporters yelled questions, and microphones thrust forward. But Christine's face radiated not with fury, but with relief. She looked at her daughters and whispered, "We did it." And in that instant, all the long years of quiet anguish, of smiling brightly in a marriage that starved her, started to wash away. Over the coming weeks, Christine emerged as a pillar of resilience. She strode forward with a ferocity that took even her by surprise. She spent her energy constructing a warm, laughing, safe home where her children felt no longer like pawns in a twisted favoritism game. Friends circled around her. Neighbors welcomed her. Her kids saw a mom who no longer bore the shadow of another's domination, but the light of her own freedom. And Christine did something she hadn't done in years. She let herself dream once more. She began new projects, pursued dreams she once suppressed, and even left herself open to the possibility of love, but this time on her own terms. For Christine, the decision wasn't freedom from Kody. It was permission to live, unapologetically, and fully. If Christine was joy, Janelle was resolve. As soon as the gavel struck, she knew her battle wasn't merely about escaping Kody. It was about showing her children that strength lies not in silence, but in standing tall even when it hurts. Janelle got right to work, unraveling the money tangles Kody had left behind. The court had given her freedom, but with it came accountability. And Janelle, sensible and steadfast, met it halfway. She opened accounts at her own bank. She secured her own assets. She started making decisions not for the family as Kody had understood it, but for her family, her children, her future. Her kids, once divided by the manipulative lines Kody had drawn, began to reunite. They saw in their mother a model of resilience, a woman who could lose a battle yet win a war. One evening, sitting around the dinner table, her son told her, "Mom, I'm proud of you." Janelle's eyes welled up with tears. She didn't cry a lot, but this time she did, because for years, she had given it all away. Her money, her voice, her peace, to a man who gave her nothing but broken promises. And now her children could finally see her for what she was, a fighter who never quit. For Janelle, freedom wasn't just about escaping Kody. It was about reclaiming her identity as a mother, a provider, and a woman who refused to be broken dot of all the wives. Meri's journey was perhaps the most complex. She had spent years in limbo, neither fully in Kody's life, nor completely out. She had been disregarded, dismissed, and left with leftovers of love. But she had clung on, hoping, waiting, grasping for the illusion of family that no longer was. The court's verdict compelled Meri to confront a truth she had evaded for too long. There was no turning back. Afterward, Meri withdrew from the world initially. She wept, she wondered, she relived years of sacrifice in her head. But then, gradually something started to change. She understood that if she had lost Kody, she had also lost the imprisonment of his neglect. Meri began small. She went on solo walks. She reunited with old friends. She started projects she had postponed for years. And as she sat in her house one night, writing by candlelight in her journal, she wrote one sentence that summed up her change. I am not what I lost. I am what I choose to become. Meri's healing was quieter than Christine's and Janelle's, but no less powerful. She wasn't chasing joy or rebuilding finances. She was rebuilding herself. And for the first time, she didn't feel like the forgotten wife. She felt like a woman reborn. Freedom for Meri wasn't loud. It was consistent. And in that consistency she found a power she never realized she possessed. While the wives emerged from the flames, Kody dove into them. Throughout the days following the verdict, he seethed. He phoned reporters, claiming the court was unfair. He bemoaned online, blaming his wives for betrayal. He stormed through his home, screaming at walls that no longer heard. Robin remained loyal to him, her devotion not wavering, but even she could not compensate for the loss left in his wake. The house became quieter, darker, colder. The man who had once ruled a household of wives and children, now roamed like a king with no throne. He repeated the judge's words again and again. He repeated Christine's statement, "We didn't betray you. We survived you." It stabbed deeper each time, not because it was untrue, but because it was. Kody attempted to assert control. He reached out to his children, but some refused to speak to him. He asked for loyalty from those who still communicated with him, but his requests sounded more of desperation than command. The empire he had constructed, the image of himself as patriarch, was destroyed. And for the first time, Kody was left to confront what he had become, a man alone, undone by his own decisions. As his wives ascended into liberty, Kody descended into obsolescence. And the world took notice. Web news of the trial went viral. Headlines described a dethroned patriarch and liberated wives. Talk shows analyzed the theatricals in the courtroom. Social media buzzed with hashtags. #justice for Christine, #freedom for Janelle, #Meri are born. Fans, previously polarized in their allegiances, rallied to the women. They became symbols of strength, of bravery, of not being silenced. And as the cameras trailed along behind them into their new lives, the contrast became unavoidable. 3 women creating futures, 1 man trapped in the wreckage of the past. 1 year after that, Christine, Janelle, and Meri sat down to dinner together. Their children played in the backyard, laughing. They weren't merely surviving anymore, they were thriving. A picture was taken that evening, 3 women together, smiling, unencumbered. It went viral on social media, not only recording their triumph, but their evolution. As for Kody, he sat in his own peaceful dwelling, reading the headlines, grumbling under his breath about betrayal and unfairness. But deep inside, even he recognized, the narrative had progressed beyond him. And thus the tale of Kody Brown and his wives did not conclude in harmony. It ended in truth. Christine found happiness. Janelle found empowerment. Meri found herself. And Kody, he found the hollowness of control without love. The verdict might have shut the case, but the true judgment was inscribed in the lives that ensued. And as season 20 draws to a close, one thing is certain: sometimes the greatest win isn't winning the fight, it's finally leaving it behind.